Welcome to the Daily Dev Talk with me, Adrian Nantchev, where we explore and share experiences, stories, and lessons 7 days a week from across the games industry, helping you make the best game you can. Stay tuned for today's episode. Good morning, Overload Nation. Welcome to another episode of the Daily Dev Talk, talking to game developers from across the world to bring you experiences, stories, and lessons 7 days a week. Today, I'm joined with Alexander Lazebnikov to talk about his latest game, Legacy of Svarog. Tell me, Alexander, how did you first get into the games industry?
Well, I wanted to make a game since I guess I was 6 years old in Soviet Russia working on that. I think it was some game with ladders and a little pixelated guy climbing them that I saw that caught my attention, but I haven't been able to realize that ambition until probably about 10 years ago when I went to college.
Okay, so have you worked on any games before at all?
Absolutely. I was working on a pretty extensive project. Since it's been my life's passion, I've always been interested in art and modeling, and there was another person that was working on a game with me, and we spent 2 years developing assets and resources, and it was pretty much ready to go. And then this person disappeared from the project, and I was kind of left holding the bag. And since I didn't know how to program myself at the time, it killed the project. I've since learned to program so that doesn't happen again.
Oh, very useful.
I don't enjoy it, and because of this, visual editors that aid with programming are a great asset, like Playmaker from Hutong Games. But I am largely self-sufficient now.
Okay, so let's talk about your studio. You say it hasn't got a name yet, and it's you and how many other people?
Right now it's free. It's me. I do most of it. The programming, modeling, rigging, animation, unwrapping, lighting, whatever, you name it. My wife helps with the textures. She does most of the textures for the meshes that I create.
I understand.
There's another guy, a friend of mine named Christopher, who puts together the levels from the assets that I've made.
Oh, cool. Quite self-sufficient indeed. So tell me about the Legacy of Zarog. What is the game about, and what you wanted the player to experience?
The game itself is a hybrid between an adventure game and an action RPG. It's heavily story-driven, and player choice matters a great deal more, I would say, than in most games out on the market these days. For example, even in the very beginning, you play as Yaroslav, a soldier, a veteran from 25 years of conflict. And in the very beginning, the prince comes and offers him a mission for 10,000 gold when he's completely broke to go to the frontier region and build him a stronghold there. Now, if you refuse the prince, you then get to ask another person to go in your place, which is basically how you select between players. If you don't ask anyone of the 4 people available in the tavern, then the prince has no choice but to go himself to build this stronghold. And this is the game's hard mode, so to say, because unfortunately the prince doesn't know how to fight. And if he's not at court securing gold shipments for you, you get no funding throughout the game.
Oh, interesting concept where depending on what the player decides and says depends on the difficulty and the game as a whole. Interesting twist on the difficulty settings.
And obviously, the characters you pick all play quite differently with different personalities and different choices, which will
Hmm.
affect the illusion of choice within the game world. But really, it feels quite responsive in that sense.
Okay, so tell me, how is it you're going about promoting the game? What strategies are working well and what aren't working so well?
Um, my wife is taking care of most of that, which, by the way, is a great thing because when you're creating a game, having someone you trust to promote it and deal with the business aspect of it is invaluable. So you can just focus on creation. But
Hmm.
in general, she's got a Twitter campaign going, Facebook, standard stuff. I haven't done a Kickstarter yet because it needs to build a little more momentum. But I did put the game on Steam Greenlight.
Yes, yeah, I saw. Cool. And so, Kickstarter is the main method of funding, or are there any other ways you're going about that?
Um, I saved up enough money from my regular, 9 to 5 to be able to complete the game with no additional required funding.
Hmm.
The job I do have is I was a senior technical animator for a marketing firm. It was pretty dry, but it paid fairly well. So I have enough resources to live on and continue developing for another year or so. Um, Kickstarter and those means of funding are largely for polish and features that I wouldn't be able to have without the extra money.
Hmm.
Perhaps more weapons for each character. Right now it's a choice of two, but Yaroslav can use a sword and spear, but I'd like to add mace and shield and things like that. Graphics polish, maybe more robust code, make sure it
I,
works on a variety of engines.
I get you. That sounds very ambitious. So, I know it's in pre-alpha at the moment, but has there anything already been cut from the game? Whether it would have been too big or too fun or too unscalable?
Yes, I've been working on this game for the past 2 years, creating basically a giant pile of assets in the process. But right in the middle of my development cycle, Unity, the engine I use, certain your listeners are familiar with, came out with the Mechanim animation system,
Mm.
and it was just so much better than what they had before that I faced a very difficult choice. Scrap everything I have and switch to Mechanim, or continue, and I chose to stop at that point, cut out the entire combat system, the character controller, everything I had written up to that point, throw it away and learn Mechanim. Uh, but as a result, now every animation I make is completely extensible to all the monsters and enemies in the game.
That's pretty cool. Very useful.
So, for example, if I make, spear animations for Yaroslav or the dual wielding knives that I'm working on right now, I can now hook it up to bandits, and it works, and it looks a lot better because it.
My issue with that is, are you not concerned that the animations all look the same, so the players will notice that the way the character moves, or the foot movement, or the weights, or such like that,
Uh, not
that it all look identical?
they're not really identical because of animation retargeting and the way their rigs are set up. There's also plugins for Unity you can download, like IK editors that you can tweak slightly each movement.
That's cool to know.
Also, when I create animations for, say, the spear, there is around 100 techniques that I make to attack with, but the player is only going to use about 10 of them, and the enemies are going to use the other 90.
I get you.
And different enemies will use different uh, segments of that timeline.
Good, because I noticed that when games have shared animations, they all look identical, and it would be cool if they were delayed or changed or tweaked in some manners or subtle ways, so as it's not a completely carbon copy for all the characters. So I'm curious, what was the biggest thing you learnt while working on this game?
That's a good question. It's probably to always have a goal.
Mm.
I try to keep weekly goals for myself. Otherwise, the development just gets knocked off track by any number of things in your real day-to-day life. And it's just a matter of fine-tuning those goals to be achievable, so you're not constantly depressed with failure.
Yes, I understand.
So, for example, if you set a goal to, say, build the entire stronghold this week, it doesn't happen, you have to reevaluate your goal and say, look, this week I'm gonna just build the assets for the castle, and next week I'll put them together in Unity and make everything work.
So, what was the worst thing that happened, and how did you overcome it?
That was probably a couple of months ago, actually, when my basement flooded and my office and work computer went halfway underwater.
Hmm.
I was able to recover the data, but the time between the delay in being able to work was pretty stressful, and the uncertainty of, if you get restored to all your licenses and all the project settings.
And you overcame this just through sheer persistence.
Well, no, I sent the computer out to a data recovery service, and which incidentally is not cheap. And then I just had to sit and cross my thumbs, and in a sense, leave it to fate.
I
Luckily, it
understand
worked out,
completely.
but it was a very stressful period.
I understand. So, what game development related book, lecture, or learning resource can you recommend?
Um, from my side, I recommend the 3DS Max Bible if you want to.
Oh, right. Oh, really? I've got a copy of those
Yeah, they're
from
great books.
2011.
I mean, I know
Very big.
it's very big, but if you read all of it, you're set. You should know everything you need to know to start creating assets.
Oh, definitely. I feel that 3ds Max is very good for artists, just to get in and just create the asset you want, because the modifiers just it does it all for you. Maya is a lot better for animation, but you can still do both of which in either.
Yes, yes. I agree. In a large sense, it's the artist, not the tool.
Oh, definitely.
But I'm comfortable with Max because throughout most of my professional career, I was doing, hard surface modeling of
Hmm.
expensive medical machines and, server chassis, that type of stuff.
Yes, it's the artist, so you can create AAA content in either Max, Maya, Blender, 3D, Cinema 4D, all sorts.
Yeah, I started in Milkshake.
Aha, right,
Yes.
that's quite old. So, what was the best game development related purchase you made? Whether it was a software license, a top quality piece of hardware, or equipment, or simply a comfortable chair and a good desk?
Well, that's between two. Can't decide. Uh, Probably number one is Playmaker from Hutong Games. It's a Unity plugin that's a visual state machine, and it allows people who are more artistically inclined to lay out diagrams visually instead of having to stare at lines of code, which I personally go crazy doing for a long time.
That sounds very useful.
And the second one would be Adventure Creator, which is another plugin for Unity. And if all you want to make is one of those adventure games where you walk around, interact with objects, talk to people, it does all of that for you.
Wow, that sounds pretty useful. Is that how you created the dialogue system in the game?
Correct.
Aha,
I
cool.
had written one in Playmaker before. It took me about 4 or 5 months. And I was still working on it, and it wasn't perfect. And then I got Adventure Creator just to try it, and it took me under a week to learn it. There's excellent tutorials online and resources, and I wound up scrapping everything I had and replacing Adventure Creator as the main dialogue and interaction system.
That sounds really cool. I didn't know about these Unity plugins before, and it makes Unity a lot more appealing because I'm not that code heavy. I learned Unreal Script,
Right.
so I know the basics of code, inheritance and such. But code really isn't for me. But if it's visualized, like Kismet or Blueprint, or in this case, Playmaker, sounds very useful and very efficient.
Playmaker
So,
is absolutely phenomenal for artists who don't enjoy programming. You can do 95% of the things that you need to do in your game, health systems, fighting, combat code, enemy AI, whatever you need, without having to touch a line of script.
that sounds cool.
It, obviously takes a couple, some mental effort to understand the workflow and how it operates, but there's a lot of, again, online resources and tutorials on their site.
So I'm curious, like an Evernote or Trello, do you have a useful or productivity enhancing software, app, extension, or website worth sharing?
I'm a little bit old school in this sense. At work, we used Clarizen, but that's another project management software, Clarizen. In the context of this game, I use a notepad and a telephone. It's much easier to just meet with people face to face, write down, what you're going to achieve this week, and everyone is on the same page.
Literally, yeah. Cool. So, what advice, Alexander, can you give to aspiring game developers, small indie studios, and people trying to get to where you are today?
I guess it's debatable that where I am is all that lofty an achievement, but I do have a nearly completed game, which is something. It's kind of hard to give advice to people because everybody works in a different way. If you're more of a programmer, you need different set of advice than if you're an artist. And the only general advice I can think of is don't give up. Don't listen to the people that tell you can't do it, because if you don't ever really take the plunge, obviously you will never get anywhere. And there's going to be a lot of people telling you that it's a fool's errand and it's not feasible and your game doesn't look good, or all sorts of stuff that if you're fragile and you don't have a strong belief in your dream, it will crush you.
Yes, strong belief. I agree.
I think most people that do try to create an indie game, they really believe in their concept. They want it to happen. At least that's how it is for me. It's not just something that would be cool.
Yeah, I understand.
thing I wanted to do, since I was repairing toilets for a living and doing construction work and roofing.
Wow. Okay. Wow, that's quite a lot. That's quite a big difference. Toilets to games.
Well, I come to this country with nothing, so you have to save up a little bit of money to afford a college education in order to make the video games that I wanted to.
I understand.
But now I'm in a very different spot in my life. I do have an education, and I've worked in the, perhaps not video games industry, but the modeling industry certainly for the past 6 years. I worked as a database programmer for 3 years prior. So I have all the tools, and if that is your goal, then, don't let things like lack of funding or anything really stop you. Just lay out a long-term plan, work for it, and eventually it will happen.
I agree completely. So I'm curious, Alexander, what is next for you, and what's the best way people can contact you?
There is obviously the Facebook page for Legacy of Svarog and Twitter account. What's next for me is the Kickstarter. I'm putting together some more exciting gaming footage. This week I plan to complete the dual-wielding dagger animations for the female character in the game. And put that into a video, make an announcement, and maybe in a couple of weeks start the Kickstarter countdown. I'm by nature impatient, but my wife kind of tells me to cool my horses sometimes and wait until the game has built enough momentum before putting it on Kickstarter.
Yes. I agree.
It's good advice.
Well, Alexander, it seems that we're out of time for this episode of the Daily Dev Talk. It was really great to talk to you and to know your story about how you came from the Soviet Union to America to work on your dream of making games. I wish you well in your endeavors to work on Legacy of Svarog.
Svarog.
So, thanks a lot for this interview.
Thank you for taking the time to talk to me, and I hope somebody out there learns something from this.
That is the aim and goal. That's the plan. So, stay tuned, Overload Nation. More episodes to come. Thanks for listening to today's episode of the Daily Dev Talk with me, Adrian Nantchev. If you are a game developer that wants to get your name and game out there and to share your experiences and stories, or you have feedback or opinions of the show, then contact me at info@gameoverload.co.uk. That's info@gameoverload.co.uk. Stay tuned for tomorrow's episode. More to come.